So now let's talk about the transition module and how we do keys, transitions, wipes, DVE effects, that kind of thing. So over here on the transition module, the left-hand side of the fader bar is everything that has to do with what kind of key we're doing, what we're doing to it. So for instance, background. This is going to be a lot like most switchers you've used. If I hit background and decide I want to do a mix, and I dissolve between it, it's going to produce a dissolve. If I select DSK1, it will show me here on preview what my next transition will look like when I move the fader arm or hit auto trans or cut. So now if I move the fader arm, it's going to simply bring in this key. My preview is always showing me what's coming next. My program is always showing me what I have on the air. If I hit background and DSK1 together, it shows me that I'm going to dissolve to a new piece of video and bring a key in simultaneously. I can also do two keys simultaneously. Here I have DSK1 and DSK2. We're going back and forth. And in this case, I'm going to do all three things at once. I'm going to change my background. I'm going to bring in DSK1 and 2. And maybe here I might take DSK2, lose it, then take background DSK1 and lose the whole thing to another piece of video. Not only can I do a dissolve with this, but I also have a non-additive mix, a super mix, which is kind of the electronic equivalent of the old splitting the fader bars. And a preset color mix allows me to either dip to black or dip to a color in between these two pieces of video I have on program preset. So with one fader action, I'm going to dip to black. The next fader action brings up what I have on preset. Now there's a couple of things I can do in my setup menu that allows me to change the way that these things are going to run. For instance, I can say I want to have what's called normal stroke mode, which means that I want to have one stroke down, one stroke up, like we just showed. I can also change it to single stroke mode, which means that in the middle of the transition, it will go to black and then automatically come up. So one stroke versus two strokes. The last feature I have on this is called one-time enable. If I leave one-time enable on, which is the default, that means that when I press preset color mix, doing the effect coming back up automatically throws it back to the last type of transition I had. If I have one-time enable turned off, it'll stay in preset color mix until I turn it off. Let's talk now about transition preview. Transition preview allows me to take a look at something on preview without putting it to air first. So for instance, on program preset, if I wanted to do a dissolve and I wanted to see what the dissolve would look like, particularly if I was going to bring a key in or not, the director might not like it too much if I did this on the air a whole lot to check it. The way transition preview works is if I hold my finger on the button while I'm holding it, on the preview monitor, you can see that it keeps showing me the transition over and over again for every time I hit the fader bar or the auto trans button. Lets me look at it. When I take my finger off the button, it automatically now will let me do it on air. And the last two things on here are auto trans and cut. We should all be pretty familiar with these. Auto trans will automatically do a transition. Cut cuts it. For those of you that are used to other switchers on the market, there is a setting in our menu that allows you to swap these two. So if you're used to auto trans being on the right and cut being on the left, there's a setting. Don't worry, you're taken care of. And speaking of auto trans, here's how you set the auto trans rate on the Mix Effects bank. So there's a couple different ways to set the trans rate on the ME bank. One of the ways is on the 10 keypad. I'm going to select trans rate, and program preset is already here, and I'm going to just type in 10, enter, and notice the display has now changed to 10 frames. The other place you can set it is on the menu. Up here I'm going to select miscellaneous, transition, and here you can see that I can see every single transition rate in the entire switcher. So all I'd have to do is come over here and say program preset transition, either change the knob, or again, hit this and my pop-up comes up and I can select 25 frames, and now it says it here and down here on the display. Now let's move on to wipes. The 8000G has, quite frankly, a ton of wipes with the ability to take up to 3 patterns and mix them together, all sorts of edges and modifiers. Let's take a look. If we take a look at the wipe, there's a normal left to right wipe, which we're all pretty familiar with. If I double punch the wipe button on the control panel, up on the menu pops up the wipe menu. You can see here on the bottom that I have main pattern, pattern mixing, what's called a sub pattern, edge and direction, modify for the main pattern, modify for the sub pattern. Real quick, let's go back to the main. We have different pages: standard, enhanced, rotary, mosaic, mosaic 2, mosaic 3, and random and diamond dust. Let's take a standard wipe just to make it easy, and let's select a circle. So if I touch the circle and I move my fader arm, I have a normal circle wipe. Okay, now I can come over and do something normal like select edge and direction. Here I can decide if I want a border, so I'll turn border on. Again, the light lights blue on the menu when I turn it on, meaning that the knob has become active. So we'll just bring our border up. Notice that the border can get quite large. Bring the border. In this case, I might want a soft edge instead, or a soft border. In this case, if you look at the knobs, I have width, and I have inner softness and outer softness. So here's a nice little glow on our wipe. I can also select splits, where a split allows me to split the wipe in half. As I move the wipe, I get a split on it. It's kind of an interesting effect. And I can adjust the mats. So for instance, here is the color outside that I want. So I adjust matte. Notice here I have on edge fill, I have a border around this. So I can choose between a matte or utility 2 bus. So here's my matte, and if I choose utility 2 bus, notice here that now I have video inside my utility 2 bus. Here I have the rotating MVS G logo, or I could have some other kind of video into it. And that will just be part of the white border. Let's go back to matte. Something else I can do on the matte here is I can use this button called Matte Adjust. Pretty much anywhere on the MVS that there's a matte, you have basically what we call a choice between flat color, which is what you're looking at now, or mix color. A mix color is basically a color mix or a wash generator, you might also know that term. Allows me to have two different colors. Here's color 1, and now I'm going to select color 2, change it a little bit. I can come back over to mix color, adjust the softness, the pattern, the size, and I can play with all sorts of things like angle, where it is. I can change speed to make it actually just kind of go by itself. So we have this wipe here. It looks kind of interesting. Let's go back over to the edge and direction and turn split off. So we have just a plain old wipe with kind of a color pulsating glow on the outside. Let's see what else we can change with this wipe. Let's go into pattern mixing. We can turn on pattern mixing and select a sub pattern. On the sub pattern, let's go to the enhanced and select a star. If we go back to pattern mix, under mix, if we change our mix ratio, you can see the wipe is now morphing between a star and a circle. We have normal mix, we have a non-additive mix, which will actually put both wipes together. We have a negative non-additive mix, which just puts basically one wipe on the outside, cuts the hole with it. And what morphing does is morphing allows you to actually change the position of the wipe as you're transforming. So you can see here that the way the start is going, it starts out as a circle and ends up as a diamond as you're doing the transition. I can also use, to put a third white pattern, I can turn on dust mix. And when I turn on dust mix, I can adjust how much dust I want on this. I can adjust what's called the flash rate, basically whether I want the dust to wiggle or not. So here now, taking a look at this, I have 3 entire white patterns morphed together, while at the same time in the border I have 2 color mixes with yet another wipe generator. It's a pretty interesting wipe. Going back here, we can add a couple more things to this wipe. We can go into the sub-modify, because you see up on the menu it shows the main pattern is a circle, the sub-pattern is the star. If I come over here on the sub-modify, I can turn on a couple of things like spiral. If I turn on spiral, what it will do is it not only rotates it, but it actually bends the wipe. So now I come up with a rather interesting looking wipe. So now let's figure out how we change the direction of the wipe. Down here on the transition module, right below wipe, you'll see normal, reverse, and normal, reverse. Normal allows me to run the wipe from the back of the screen to the front. Reverse, of course, does the opposite direction. And here, normal reverse will basically just go back and forth between the two. But the nice thing about this is that I don't have to go into the menu to change what direction my wipe is going. These 3 buttons are available underneath every single wipe button on every single transition generator.